Hey everybody, long time no see. Welcome to episode 93 of A Stitch in Time. Today is Tuesday, March 26, 2019. My name's Carol and I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. It feels like absolute ages since I last spoke to you, and how are you all doing? I hope you're all well. It's actually been about 3 weeks, and during that time I came down with a cold that morphed into an upper respiratory infection. So unfortunately I was in no shape to podcast. A couple of weeks ago my voice sounded like this, and about a week later it sounded more like this. And I'm so happy to have my voice mostly back to normal. I'm not sure how my husband feels about that, but I for one am delighted. I am still prone to a lot of throat clearing and coughing fits, so I'll try and keep those to a minimum, and I'll do my best to edit them out of the finished product. I wanted to thank all of you who reached out to me and sent me get well wishes. Thank you so much. That really made my day. It's nice to be missed. I missed you too, and I just can't tell you how happy I am to be back recording today. I had one day when I really didn't feel like knitting. That's when you know, or that's when I know I'm really sick, is when I don't even want to pick up the knitting needles. Then I had lots of days when the only thing I felt like doing was knitting. And so I have loads and loads of projects to share with you today. So I warned you, it's going to be a long one. You might want to grab something to drink and settle in for the long haul. I, for one, have a glass of water and a hot cup of tea, and I'm hoping that those will serve to soothe my throat so that I can get through the next hour or so. In fact, I'm going to take a sip right now. I can feel a tickle in the back of my throat. I pulled out my spring or summer cups. More definitely not wintry cup anymore. It's time for something new. Well, since I last spoke to you, we've had every kind of weather. Actually, would have been so mixed up with my time. I think it's 2 weeks ago today we had snow, and then that was followed by a stretch of really warm weather. And when I say really warm, I mean in the mid-20s, which translates to like high 70s Fahrenheit. And now we're back to sort of more seasonal temperatures. It was raining when I got up this morning, but it's since kind of more overcast now, and we've even had the odd bit of sun poking through the clouds. So it's been good weather to be outside a little bit, and I think everyone's happy to see the last of winter disappear. Which, you know, is when you really need more fuzzy slippers. When I spoke to you last, I said the next project I was going to cast on were some slippers for my husband Cameron, because his had holes in them. And I did in fact do that. I think I cast them on that day or the next day, and over the next couple of days finished up the pair. And then that weekend when he was home, we felted them. So for those of you who may not be familiar with felting, or fulling as it's more correctly known, you knit something big and loose out of non-superwash wool, and then you put them in the washing machine with hot water, lots of agitation, and you deliberately shrink them till they get to be the size you need. And so I personally prefer the felted clogs by Bev Gillespie's, but my husband likes this pattern, which is also by Bev Gillespie's, called Family Classic Felt Slippers. And I knit this pair out of some yarn I had in my stash for like ages, called Naturally Tussock DK, and it was color 277. I have no idea if this is available anymore or not. I also don't know if you'll be able to tell. This is actually a tweed yarn. There's like black and red tweed in there, but I don't know how well that's showing up on camera. doesn't even show up that well in real life. A little bit there, you can see. I have made numerous pairs of slippers over the years, and I really miss my top-loading washing machine for the felting part of it. But every time I do a new pair of slippers in my front loader, they get better and better because I'm learning more and more what to do. And so in this case, what I did is, pardon me, I set it on the highest agitation and hot water, and I let it go through the first part of the wash, and then I would pull it out and soak them in a bucket of cold water just to shock it, and then I'd throw it back in for another hot cycle. So I think the amount of agitation was maybe, I think it wasn't even 10 minutes each time. So it took a while to get them to the right size, but I feel like the stitches felted quite well this time. They didn't disappear quite as well on the bottom as they do sometimes. That's just some glue that when I kind of was putting this suede soles on and had this one fall here by mistake. So it's a little bit of glue. That'll just come off with time. But anyway, I'm pretty pleased with how these turned out because I've had mixed results with my front loader. Now, Cameron's been very patient. They took a few days to dry, and then they've been sitting there waiting for their soles. And I finally got around to putting those on this morning. Last night, Cameron was going to wear them finally, and I said, can you just wait one more day so I can show them on the podcast? So I decided I better put the soles on, and there they are ready to go. So he can wear those tonight. He's so patient. He knows my habit of procrastination on certain things. But he loves me anyway, so that's good. So the next thing that I finished is a pair of socks that had been on the go for quite a while. And that's my hazelnut socks by Helen Stewart. This is the 6th and final pattern in the Handmade Sock Society 1, which was based on The Secret Garden, the book, The Secret Garden. I knit these from Magpie Fibers Swanky Sock in the Hells Bells colorways. So there's one sock. I'll hold that up so you can see the detail on the textured stitch pattern that runs down the side of the foot. It just has a regular slip stitch heel flap. The rest is all just stockinette. And then the other sock is knit so that it's mirror image of each. They're mirror images of each other. So the textured design will go down the outside of my left foot, and this one will go down the outside of my right foot. You can see the yarn from the yarn that one is slightly darker than the other, and that's something I found is quite common in hand-dyed yarns, and I think it has to do with how the yarns are skeined up and how the dye gets at them, because this one's definitely more intense than that one. But I don't care. I love them. I love everything about these. I know I've waxed poetic about them before. I love how the yarn and pattern worked together so nicely on these. Pardon me. And it's also a merino cashmere nylon yarn, and so they're really, really soft too. I love how they feel. So extremely pleased to finish those up. Very pleased. So I had another pair of socks that was on the needles that I continued to work on then, and they were the Jangles socks by Lori Law of Ocean Wind Knits, and I knit them from, whoops, I'm going to put these down for a sec. I knit them from this sock blank that I had received as part of the Group of 7 yarn club from this year. And this sock blank was based on this painting called Mirror Lake. And so this is what I have left over. And I know I've had numerous questions about socks sock blanks over the years, and I know I've got lots of new viewers for some reason, so hi, thank you. Welcome. So when you knit from a sock blank, it's basically just a piece of knitted fabric that is then dyed, and you find the end that unravels most easily, and you just pull this yarn off and you knit with it as it comes off the sock blank. And in this case, I've had some that are more saturated than others, but this one, because the stitches are all knit up together, the dye doesn't reach all of the whole part of the stitch equally, and so this one turned out quite speckly. So this is the first sock that came off of it. So you can see it started out kind of with blues and this mauvey color and some greens, and then kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Transitioned into this kind of pinky purple. As I mentioned, these are the jangle socks. You can see they're basically a 2x2 rib cuff, and then you knit this triangular heel flap, do a little heel turn, and then you decrease for the gusset. And in this case, you can see these ribbed stitches run all the way down the foot. This particular design of sock, I had knit my husband a pair called Downtown Mystery Socks for Christmas that incorporated this type of heel, and I wanted to try it for myself. It gives a lot of, they're knit round and round except for the part where you turn the heel. So there's no picking up stitches for the gusset, and it gives quite a fair bit of fabric through the instep area. So if you have a high instep, this would be a really good style of sock for you. So what I thought I would do is contrast how a sock looks when it's first knit from the sock blank, and then how it looks after. So because when you knit from a sock blank, your yarn is all, you know, squiggly, your knitting itself is going to look quite uneven and squiggly too. So this sock has not been blocked, and you can see it's really uneven looking, bumpy, lumpy, but after you soak and block them, looks nice and smooth, just like any other yarn. So that's a good indication for you if you're a little bit nervous about knitting with one and wondering how it's all going to look like after it's knit. No fear, it will look just fine. So put these onto blocker, then you can get see how they look as a pair. So I didn't do any color management at all with this pair. I just started at the end of the sock blank, and then I just knit them as they came off. And so you can see that when this one finished with this pinky mauvey color, I cast on for the second one and continued on down, and they're almost sort of opposite with the way they turned out. You can also see on this pre-blocked sock that there's quite a bit of fabric here through this gusset area, or instep area. So as I say, if you have a high instep, this would give you more room. I don't. I can very easily wear like a short row heel or regular heel flap and gusset, but I did want to give these a try for myself, and they seem to fit just fine from what I can tell. So I'm kind of anxious now to soak and block this one and then have a matching pair. So yeah, once again, Jangles Socks by Lori Law. And yeah, they were very fun to knit. I especially liked the blue section here at the end. I don't know if it can tell on camera so much. It almost looks more greeny blue from what I could see on the screen, but there were a lot of sort of real icy blues in this area too. So that was my favorite section, and I really liked this kind of purpley mauvey color too. So yeah, 2 pairs of socks finished since I saw you last. So once I had finished those, I was really itching to cast on something new. I had just finished a couple of sweaters, so I had it in my head that I wanted to knit another sweater. Kind of itching to knit another shawl. Wasn't sure, so I was on Ravelry and looking at patterns and just really overwhelmed by choice. Paralyzed by choice is actually probably a better way of putting it. You know, the wonderful thing about Ravelry is we have an untold number of patterns and designers at our disposal. And that's also the bad thing about Ravelry, because it can be quite overwhelming. I find that I see so many things I want to knit that I don't know what to start with, or I see things I want to knit but then I don't have exactly the right yarn, and then I kind of sometimes get into that what's the word, vicious circle of buying more yarn to knit the pattern instead of using the yarn I already have. And or sometimes I don't buy the yarn, but I keep thinking about it. And anyway, I just had a really tough time deciding what I was going to knit next. So what I did in the meantime is I turned to what I already had. And it turned out I have had and still have a fair number of projects on the needles that had been neglected for quite some time. So while I brewed over what I wanted to knit next, what I wanted to cast on next, I picked up some old projects, and I'm really glad I did. So the first thing I picked up was my Adventurous wrap, and this was a project. It's by Amba O'Brien, and I had done this as an Advent project using leftover bits of sock yarn. Excuse me, I'm going to cough, so I'll be right back. Okay, hopefully that's better. That's one of those things, talking a lot tends to trigger the cough, so we'll see how it goes. So as I was saying, I knit this as an Advent project, and I can't remember I don't think I finished the whole thing during Advent itself, but I think by the end of December I had finished all the knitting. And for those who aren't familiar with it, the Adventurous wrap is basically 2 triangular pieces. There's one. There's the other. And then they are joined together along the diagonal edge. You put one upside down and one right side up. And it becomes a shawl or a wrap or a long scarf, however you want to think of it. And in the pattern, the 2 sides are joined together with a 3 needle bind off. And I didn't like the idea of having that sort of heavier ridge running down the shawl, and so I had decided I was going to do a Kitchener stitch and graft the 2 pieces together. But that's what made it sit and kind of go into hibernation, because I knew I needed to sit down at a time when I was in the right frame of mind, had the right amount of patience, had the right kind of light, all those things. And nothing ever seemed to come together in a perfect storm. And so finally I did. I sat down, and I began grafting several times, and I just wasn't happy with how it was coming out. It wasn't looking how I thought it would. I was thinking it would give more of an uninterrupted look of garter stitch, and in fact I ended up with kind of a space between the bumps. And pardon me, in the end I just had to be done. And so I did a 3 needle bind off. The other thing that was standing in my way is I knew somehow I'd ended up with 3 more stitches on one side than the other, and I knew those had to be incorporated into the graft. As it turned out, this is the wrong side of the 3 needle bind off, which doesn't look bad, and this is the right side. So you've got a little bit of a wider gap there. But I was finding basically the same thing with the Kitchener stitch too. So I'm going to maybe stand up, might give you a better look at how I'm going to, yeah, you know what I'm going to do is, hold on, I'm going to slide my ironing board out a ways. Hope my camera doesn't fall. And then I can hold this up and show you a better view. So that's how it turned out. Now, when I was knitting it, I was worried that the colors from each side wouldn't blend together well enough, but I actually am fairly happy with how it all looks. But I find it a little bit hard to wear. It's quite a wide wrap. So you can, you know, wrap it like this just to wear it like a shawl. But it's weird because it has that bend in it from the triangle. So it doesn't actually come wrap around like a normal shawl would. And then if you kind of, oh no, I'm going to mess my hair up. Try to wear it kind of like, you know, the traditional kind of around your neck. This is not really working well, is it? I find that kind of bulky because it's quite a bulky shawl. See, it doesn't look so bad like that, but I feel like there's a lot of bulk back here. So I don't know, and you know, and I'm looking at it here on screen and it doesn't look too bad, but there is a lot of bulk here, and so I'm not sure how much wear I'll get out of it after all that. But I had fun knitting it, and if I don't decide not to wear it myself, I will definitely find somebody else who will. My daughter is often a willing recipient of the things that I decide that I don't want to use or won't use. I'm just looking for a place to put these. 1 sec, I'm just going to put it here. While I have the camera pulled so far back, be a good time to then talk about what I'm wearing, which is another project that I dug out of hibernation. And in fact, I believe I cast this on last March. How pathetic is that? It is the Angelus Novus cardigan by Renee Callahan, and I knit it out of Blacker Swan Falkland DK in the Dolphin colorway. And when I pulled it out, I had the whole back and about half the front done. So when I started again, it didn't take that long to finish up the fronts and add the sleeves. So it is I'm going to just kind of kneel up on my chair. Camera is not quite high enough, I guess, or it's too high, I don't know. Anyway, it is, you can see it's a cardigan that you can wrap across your front and hold shut with a shawl pin. Or you can let the fronts fall open, and it's like a waterfall cardigan. And in fact, this is the way I am more likely to wear it. And the feature on this cardigan, and I'm just going to make sure you can see it, is this beautiful lace pattern that is featured on the back. So hopefully you can see it. So it's like a big wide swingy cardigan. So there's lots of room. It's comfy. I'm kind of kicking myself for not finishing it sooner. I actually knit it in this color because it reminded me of like a cotton knit, like t-shirt knit gray cardigan. I think it's called a yoga wrap or something that I already own, and I thought it would be a good substitution for that, and in the wool be a little bit warmer. So I'm, like I said, I wish I'd finished it earlier. It has this broken rib cuff on the sleeves just garter stitch along the edges. And I kind of messed up. Being the honest knitter I am, I think this side turned out fine. Yeah, this side's fine. I did the decreases all in the right spot along this edge for the armhole. This one I kind of messed up, and in some cases I went 1 stitch in from the edge instead of 2. So I'm kind of disappointed in that. I didn't see it until I was just about finished, and I wasn't about to rip it back and start over. And I ended up doing it, I can't remember which side. I did it, yeah, here, just on 1 stitch on the front. That one was easier to hide, but that's okay. I can live with it. So yeah, there's a good look at the lace pattern. Hopefully that got in the frame before. So very, very happy to have to finish that. So I'm gonna bring things back in. It's very high tech around here, in case you hadn't clued in. And hopefully my camera's straight. I'm always struggling to get these bookshelves straight in the frame, and I think they usually are a little bit off, but oh well. And then if that wasn't enough, when I finished the cardigan, I pulled out a shawl that I had started, oops, jiggle, jiggle again, I think back in the fall while I was waiting. I think it was when I was waiting for some other pattern to be released, because then I started working on it and then I let it go again. So fittingly enough, it was not much before St. Patrick's Day that I picked it up, and it's this beautiful greeny blue yarn. It's the Drawing Board Shawl by Sylvia Harding, and I knit it in Malabrigo sock in the natural colorway, which is 63. And then this beautiful greeny blue is Solace, which is 809. And my daughter had given this yarn, green yarn, to me along with some beads. I think it might have been as a Christmas gift. So I think I was about halfway when I pulled it out again. So you can see it's an asymmetrical, elongated, triangular shawl, and scarfy shawl. Garter stitch has this lace pattern here, more garter than the same lace pattern, only the white here is the dominant color, where the green here is the dominant color on that side, or on that one. More garter, a little bit of like eyelet lace sort of there. And then it finishes off with yet another lace pattern. And a picot bind off, and has put the green beads in the bind off. So this one I think is really pretty. I'm gonna pull out again from the camera so that you can see it maybe a little bit more in its entirety. That gives you maybe a better view of just how it looks. So I have to say, I do find this one, even though it's quite long, it's quite light at the same time, and I find this easier to style than the Adventurous wrap. You can just kind of, now watch me mess it up, but you can just kind of wrap and wrap until you kind of get it right. Or wrong, as the case may be. I'm not doing it justice, but it definitely, with a little time in front of the mirror and a little more care, I find this one an easier style for me to wear. So there. That is the end of all my finished projects this week. There's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Probably a record, I think. But then I have had 3 weeks to work on them. be right back with works in progress. Once I had finished the last sock in the Handmade Sock Society 1, I felt like I could turn my attention to the first sock in the Handmade Sock Society 2. When the pattern first came out, I couldn't resist casting it on in this beautiful yarn from Flock Fiber Studio. It's the Hoarfrost Sparkle Fingering in the Tea Room colorway. The pattern is called the Shell Cottage Socks, and I just felt like this yarn just had all these beautiful seashell shades. Try to say that 5 times fast. It was just the perfect yarn. And so when the pattern first came out, I cast them on and did a few repeats of the pattern, and then I very diligently put them away until the hazelnut socks were done. And so I did pick them back up, and I have finished the first sock. It's really just this little shell pattern, very simple, twisted rib cuff, this shell pattern that runs down the entire leg and the instep, and then it has a eye of partridge heel. I just think, again, this is just the perfect marriage of yarn and pattern, and I couldn't be happier with how this has turned out. And so since I finished that, I have cast on the second and just done one pattern repeat, so I'll get back to that one soon. It's not so difficult a pattern that you can't like watch TV or something while you're working on them. I'll just take another sip here. I can just feel this tickle in the back of my throat. So I don't know, I'm so mixed up with my time. I guess it would have been like a week and a bit ago. It was a really nice day, and I was feeling a fair bit better. I just needed to get out of the house, and the weather was gorgeous. So we took a drive, and I needed something to work on in the car. So I cast on a pair of plain vanilla socks, and I used this yarn from Ancient Arts. Oops. Now they've changed their yarn, like it's called just on here, it's just called Fingering Sock. And this is the Tea and Biscuits colorway. When I went looking for the yarn name on Ravelry, I think it's their Socknado, or that's the closest thing I could find that compared to it. I had used this yarn as my color, I think 1 in my Adventurous wrap. So you used it on the beginning and the end of both sides of the shawl. So this is the colorway that kind of married the two sides together. And I have been wanting to knit with it since I bought it, and I've tried it out in a couple of different projects, but I finally decided it just wanted to be plain vanilla socks. And so because I had used some of it for the Adventurous wrap, I wanted to make sure that I had enough of it to make a pair of socks out of. So I decided to cast on a pair of toe-up socks, which is not very usual for me. And I also decided that since I wasn't sure how much yarn I had and how far it would go, I decided to do contrasting toe, heels, and cuffs. So I found this yarn in my stash, leftover stash, which is Midnight Cravings Sweet Sock in the Amethyst Brooch colorway. And I had used this for my, what's it called? It's a big shawl. Oh shoot, I will put it at the bottom of the screen because I just can't think of the name of it at the moment. Anyway, it just seemed to pick up. I'd use this color in my Adventurous wrap too. It just seems to go really well. And so I cast on the toe and then started the knitting. And I really like how it's knitting up. You can actually kind of see, holding it back a little bit on screen, it's almost doing a bit of a stripe or spiral kind of. Anyway, I really love this yarn. I like how it's knitting up. So that'll just be my usual kind of car project, or when I have a few minutes just to knit a few rows, when I don't have to really think about things. Gotta have a pair of plain socks on the needles at all time. Okay, so going along with the theme of picking up hibernating projects, one thing I mentioned at the beginning of the year is that one project I really wanted to finish this year was my Celesterium shawl. That's a shawl by Audrey Nicklin, and I don't know if I've got a really good picture, but I guess this will do. It's a pie shawl. It's a circular pie shawl, and what's really neat about it is that there are beads placed so that they represent the stars in the northern hemisphere, in the there's a word for that, like a star chart. I can't think. Like, that's the best I can do. Sorry. Anyway, here's a good picture. There's something I'm trying to say and I can't say it. I've had this going for almost 4 years now, and that's just ridiculous. I am knitting it from, let's see if I can find the label, Indigo Moon, their BFL yarn. She is a hand dyer from British Columbia, lives along on an island near Nanaimo. Actually, it's Gabriola Island, and hold on to that name because it's coming up again in a minute. In the Midnight Song colorway. Just kind of ironic, hadn't really thought of it till now. Anyway, so I picked this up again and have done a fair bit of the last chart. So I think when I had left off last time, it was probably about here. So I've done another couple of inches on it anyway, and you can really see the beads. They stand out really well in that light. And I just love this. I use this stitch marker to mark the beginning and end of round because it reminds me of a planet. So this I really was enjoying working on. It's basically just knit round and round, and you do the occasional yarn over, knit two together, and on the following round you place a bead where the knit two together is. And it's all mapped out on charts, and I've got it all, just follow one chart after another. I have them ready to flip as I finish one, and then I check off the row as I go. So it's easy to keep track. Unfortunately, because I've had this project on the go for so long, and because it's been living beside the couch a lot of the time in this little dark bag. It was cute. I got this in Australia with the little penguins. When we went to see the little penguins, they used to be called fairy penguins. Now they're called little penguins, but I bought that there. Anyway, it's a dark bag. It's dark yarn, sitting open, and some critters got into it. And my first inkling was I spotted a little hole in the shawl, which I was able to quite easily fix just with some kind of grafting or, Kitchener stitch, duplicate stitch. It was just a really little hole, and I mended it, and it's quite, not entirely invisible, but it's passable. And then I started a new ball of yarn, knitting along, and all of a sudden there was no end to my yarn. It just ended. And so I thought, okay, so I kind of attached this new strand and started working and came to a place where the yarn had been bitten but not completely bitten through. And okay, so then pulled some more out. There was another little nibble. So what I ended up doing is rewinding the whole ball with some tension to it. So if there was a place where the yarn had been bitten but not bitten through, it would either break or it would catch on my fingers and I would be aware of it. So I've rewound both of my extra balls of yarn on this and they seem to be fine now. Unfortunately, whoops, there goes my stitch marker. Unfortunately, I did come across another nibble. And this, it looks worse than it is because I've pulled some yarn away from it. And I've just marked it here with some stitch markers. So this is the hole here. Whoops, if I can keep that stitch marker up, which I can't. Let's see. There's a hole here. Like I say, it looks bigger because I've kind of made it bigger while I've been pulling the little broken strands out of the way. And I'm going to do some mending there. Again, when I have good light and I'm in the right mood. Because as you can tell, it's very dark yarn and I need to be able to see it. So that's disappointing. I do think, you know, knock wood, I'm just looking again and thinking, did I miss any? I hope I found the only 2 holes in the shawl. I have confidence it can be, you know, mended well enough that it won't be too bad. Just dropped some stitches off here and I've got that stitch marker on the floor. So I'm going to just duck down in a second and grab that so I don't lose that. So anyway, pleased to be working on this again. As soon as I have that little hole mended, I will pick it up and work on it some more because that is one of my goals for this year, is to finish. Well, that was convenient. The camera shut off just as I was finishing up what I was saying about that one. So you've lost a word or two. I think what I was saying is that's one of my goals for this year, is to finish that shawl up. Another goal that I have this year, actually this next project has, like, I guess 3 things in common with the Solisterium. Maybe 4. It's a shawl, that's one. The second thing it has in common is that it's also one of the projects that I really want to do this year. It is called the Water's Edge Shawl by Lori Law, and it's part of her Croissant collection of shawls. And I've owned it for, I think this was published, this one in 2015. Yeah, and I own the collection and I've been wanting to knit at least some of them and never have gotten around to it. So that's another goal for this year. Another thing that this has in common is that the colorway that I am using is called Gabriola, which is where the dyer for Indigo Moon lives, on Gabriola Island, and it is part of a gradient collection of merino wool. And so this shawl consists of there is not garter stitch here, it's reverse stocking stitch and stocking stitch stripes. And then it goes into a lace section, and then it finishes off with a knit border that you knit on sideways. And so my plan was to knit this gradient and have each section of the lace in a different shade of the gradient, and I was hoping to be able to cast off or do the final knit on edging with the last color in the gradient. Things aren't working out quite so well. The fourth thing that this project has in common with my Solisterium is that some critters got to the yarn. And I discovered that when I started to wind it. So in the first color there was one thin spot, and there were about 3 or 4 in the second. And the other skeins seem to have been untouched. So whether it's a moth, that's most likely it's a moth, could be a carpet beetle. I think there's one other kind of bug that will kind of chew on yarn. I keep most of my yarn in plastic bags, and I store a lot of it in my shelving unit here. But sometimes, for whatever reason, it doesn't make it into a Ziploc right away, or sometimes I have a project that's sitting out, like the Solisterium, that's not in a sealed bag, and it does make it vulnerable to moths. It's my own fault. It's just one of those facts of life, and I deal with it as it comes. So I've gotten quite a ways on this. So the first 2 colors, I guess you can probably tell with the lighting, is this first color that I started here. And then when this is blocked, you'll see it'll be kind of stripy. It's a little bit darker, goes into this lighter shade. So you can see where the color transitions here. So I was able to knit that right till the end of the first lace pattern. And then it was time for this next shade of blue. And then this final shade of blue is the third lace section. So I counted up my stitches, and I put in markers along the edge. I divided it into 4 first of all, and then I divided that 1/4, the first quarter, into 2, so I could see how far my skein would go on the border, to see if I had enough left to do the knit on border. So I've got 1/8 of the way along with that knit on border, but I weighed my yarn, and I do not have enough to finish. I was thinking I would have enough, but what I wasn't thinking about is you know, it's not much bigger than this section that precedes it, but when you do the border, you're knitting 2 rows for every 1 stitch that you kind of bind off or knit to, or you do like a SSK along the edge to attach the border to the bottom of the shawl, or attach the edging, I should say. And so this border this edging is eating up more yarn than I expected, and I don't have enough in this color to finish it. So what I have done is I've dropped a line to Lori, the dyer and the designer, to see if she's able to dye me up a half skein of this color or a full skein of this color, or if she can recommend another color that would complement this set. And in that case, what I'll do is I'll take this edging out, I'll knit 1 more repeat of this lace in this color, and then I will do the edging in another color. I looked through my stash to see if I had something suitable, and I just don't. So hopefully she is able and willing to do that for me, and then I'll be able to finish it. This looks very funny because I have all these ends dangling. Until I knew whether this was all going to work, I didn't want to cut any of my yarn ends after each color, and so I just have them dangling off the edge. It's quite crazy, but I think it's very pretty. I like how it's knitting up. It'll look gorgeous once it's blocked, and the lace and the stripes will all relax out. So that's my latest new project. So my finishing off extended also to my quilting. I believe I was looking back over show notes, and I think it was back in like late October, early November, that I began this quilt. And the pattern is it Rainy Days? Yeah, Rainy Days, from the Quilt As You Go Made Modern book by Jira Brandvig. And the fabric is called Sweet Reverie by Boundless. So I had sewn this whole quilt except for hand stitching down this binding. And there it sat for what? December, January, February, March and a half. March and a half. You know what I mean. Halfway through March. Before I finally picked it up. It took one evening to stitch it. You know? So anyway, this really came in handy. When I was sick, I cuddled up under this numerous times. So the timing was just right. But again, could have been using this all winter if I hadn't procrastinated so much. So anyway, I've shown this off on the podcast before, but I thought I would give you one last look. I'll lift it up. And all the same fabrics are on the other half of the quilt, so I won't bother showing you the rest. But again, why? Why? Okay, so that brings us to the end of all the projects. If you're still with me, congratulations and thanks for hanging in there. There was a lot, I know. In fact, when I would think about recording, I was kind of overwhelmed by the number of projects I had to talk about. So that just brings us to what's been going on in my life, other than being sick, because that really has sort of been the main story the last few weeks. But since I saw you last, I've had a birthday. I am now officially halfway through my 50s. And while I don't normally have a problem with age, I always think it beats the alternative. Somehow 55 sounds really old to me. And I've been thinking about it a little bit. But what do? You can't turn back the hands of time. I guess all you can do is going forward, try to be the healthiest and the best you can be. So I really need to work on that. It's been, I've kind of let my walking fall by the wayside, and I really need to get back to that. I have been eating pretty well though since the beginning of the year. Been watching sugar especially, and just trying to eat more healthily. Anyway, so it was a pretty quiet birthday, but Jessica and the kids came by that morning with cupcakes, and Jessica knit me a pair of socks. Aren't they pretty? So as someone who knits many pairs of socks, both for myself and others, it's kind of nice to be gifted a pair. These are the Estonian Crossroads socks by Nancy Bush, and they're knit from Black Cat Custom Yarn Everyday Sock in the Nova colorway. And I didn't think about it just till a little bit earlier today, but March's birthstone is aquamarine, and these kind of look like aquamarine. I actually have a birthstone ring that I bought with money I got for my 50th birthday. So now I have matching socks. So yeah, aren't they pretty? So that was really fun. And then Cameron and I had gone out the day before for a drive up to, it's called Alexandra Bridge. It's a bridge on the old highway through the Fraser Canyon. And we were looking at dates. It was built, I think it was 1924, and the new bridge, which is just downriver from it, was completed in 1962. And I know that because there's a series of tunnels through the Fraser Canyon that we would always go through on our way to go up to the cabins. So we've been traveling that route since I've been traveling that route since I was a kid, very young. Pardon me. And some of the years of the tunnels correspond with our years of birth. So I actually have two tunnels that were built in 1964. There's one that's in 1961, which is the same as my older sister and Cameron. And it's been the argument my whole life that, yes, you have two tunnels, but my one tunnel is longer than your two put together. So I had that as a kid, and then I got married, and the argument continues. However, the bridge, which was built in 1962, is the same year as my next oldest sister, Allison, and so that's her bridge. So I always remember when that one was built. Anyway, it was beautiful, beautiful sunny day, and we went for a little walk down. You park it, there's like a rest area there, and then you can walk down the old road to the bridge and across it, and a little bit on the other side. The road continues for a very small amount. So when my mom says that she used to call it the singing bridge, because you'll see from these photos that there's like an iron grid work that is the base of the bridge, the platform of the bridge. It's where the cars drive. So tires going over that used to make kind of a singing sound. In other words, you can walk on the bridge and look down and see the river below you, which used to freak me out quite a bit. I'm a little bit braver now than I used to be. So anyway, put a few pictures. You've seen a few pictures here while I'm talking, but we had thought we might do that and then go out for dinner for my birthday, because it was the day before. It was on St. Patrick's Day. But by the time we had done all that, I was kind of spent. So we decided to go out for dinner the next day instead. And so we did. That was my long way of saying what I did for my birthday. Have watched a ton of curling the last couple of weeks. They had the Canadian Men's Championships, and this week's just finished the World's Women's Championships. In town, our curling club is hosting the Canadian Seniors Championship this week, and so we are going to go see a game, or I think there's 8 going at the same time, but we're going to go check it out tomorrow night with my mom, who's down for the week visiting, and then the men's worlds is coming up. I think it starts this coming weekend, and so then a curling will all be done as far as TV watching. Very conveniently, I was not scheduled to curl the last 2 weeks because our 5th member of our team had returned from holidays, and so I was booked off for those days, which worked out great because there's no way I could have. And then we don't curl this week because of the seniors championships going on. So I'll be back curling for the next 3 weeks after that. Our schedule's gone long this year because of the new club being built. We started late. So 3 more weeks, and I'll be done curling for this season. And then ball will start first week of April. So we're going to overlap for a few weeks. My husband plays, I keep score. This past weekend, we babysat the grandkids while our daughter and son-in-law went into Vancouver and stayed overnight and celebrated their wedding anniversary. So we had a nice weekend with the kids. My youngest granddaughter, unfortunately, was not feeling well. She's kind of got sort of what I've been dealing with. So she had quite a bad cough, and then the next day was starting to the whole runny nose stage of things too. So, but she seemed to be doing better than she had the day before and the day before that. So that's good. It's all, it's just you work through it. It's a virus, and you just one symptom after another, just work your way through it. Looking forward to tomorrow. My best friend, we've been best friends since grade 2. We were supposed to get together in January. She got sick and had to cancel, and so we're on for tomorrow. So I'm really excited about that because we haven't seen each other for probably about a year. So I think we'll go for lunch, and not sure what else. We thought if the weather was good, we might go for a walk somewhere. So I haven't looked at the forecast, but since I've been talking to you, the sun has come out, and so maybe that's a good sign for tomorrow too. Before I say goodbye, I will leave you with something good. So my something good for this week is Monopoly. As a kid and a young teenager, I loved playing Monopoly, and my dad, bless his heart, played way more often than I'm sure he wanted to. So I was kind of tickled when our grandson asked for it for Christmas this year, and had a chance to play a couple games with him, and also one with including our older granddaughter this past weekend. And so yeah, actually a Saturday's game was really fun because it went on for quite a while, and got a chance to actually, you know, put up houses and hotels, and we all hung in there for quite a while before I was the first one to kind of run out of money, and our granddaughter ended up winning. I think that she was pretty pleased about that. But yeah, so that's my something good for this week is Monopoly. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I love it. And having said that, it is time to say goodbye. This is a very long one. So thanks for, if you're still here, sticking around. I have missed you. I'm so happy to be back recording. I'm really hoping that no more than a week goes by before I talk to you again, but who knows what life will throw our way. So take care till next time. I hope you get lots of chances to do what you love to do. So if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, hope you're seeing signs of spring. We're seeing more and more here all the time, and just loving it. And I guess if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, maybe you're happy that fall is on its way with a little bit cooler temperatures. So take care wherever you are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.